We lived in this serene, quiet little town, the kind of place where there were quiet streets, big yards, friendly neighbors, and a small but quaint village full of restaurants and shops. It wasn't the type of town where you ever feared looking over your shoulder at night, it just was safe. That's one of the reasons that my parents felt free to leave me alone at such a young age. I still reside in the same household with them to this day, but for the evening I'm referring to, it was on a weekend, and my parents were going out and leaving me totally on my own for the evening. In general, when we were kids, my grandparents would intervene and babysit for me and my older sister. But my sister was not home for whatever reason, and because I was finally old enough, my parents figured they could just let me do it myself. They were still relatively young themselves then, always busy, always off somewhere else or with friends on the weekends. They left some money for pizza before they left, and to a 12-year-old, that seemed like the jackpot. A night by myself, video games, and dinner at the pizza place. I was totally addicted to James Bond video games at the time, and that evening I was running through my third playthrough of Nightfire on my PS2. After I defeated it once again, I thought it was a good opportunity to get my pizza. There was this little restaurant down the street named Johnny's, one of our favorites, but it's been out of business for years now. I ordered in a standard pie, and I could quite easily devour 3 slices by myself at that age. My mother had instructed me to roll the leftovers in tin foil and place them in the refrigerator. So, I waited for the delivery, then inserted another game and wasted some time. Later, the doorbell sounded, and I ran downstairs with a $20 bill my parents had given me, already recalling that Mom had instructed me to give a $4 tip. Given that the location was 3 blocks away, that wasn't so bad considering the time. I opened it and found the delivery man a rough-looking guy in his 30s. He had an unkempt, long beard, glasses, and a black trucker's hat. I gave him the $20 and requested change, but when he handed me the pizza box, he abruptly gazed over my shoulder into the residence and queried, "You alone here?" The Keristung like a shock of electricity. It was eerie, and I immediately recognized that it was not typical. Fortunately, I was always cautioned by my parents to be careful around strangers, so I snapped, "My parents are coming home." In hindsight, not the brightest response, but I was 12 and just wanted him to leave me alone. The dude must have caught on that there were no cars in the yard and a child, not an adult, had let himself in. Either way, once he gave me my change, I closed the door as quickly as I could. I had my pizza in the kitchen, wolfed down 3 slices, and wrapped up the rest like my mom instructed me to. Then I returned to upstairs and switched to a different James Bond game, Agent Under Fire. It wasn't as great as Nightfire, but I played it for hours anyway, completely immersed in the game. Before I even realized it, it was almost 11 p.m. when the doorbell rang a second time. Without even wondering, I leaped up, thinking that it must be my parents arriving at last, and hurtled downstairs to open the door. I whispered at the door, "Mom, Dad," but a strange voice responded, "Hey, I need help." He explained that he needed to use a telephone. I asked, "Who is this?" And he just kept saying he had to use a telephone. I was afraid enough not to want to look through the window. So I went upstairs and tried to avoid it. I knew from sense that opening the door would be a bad thing to do. As I went up the stairs, there right in front of the front door, the man outside started banging and begging, "Wait please. I need help," which informed me that he had seen me. He had been spying on me through the glass at the top of the door. From the black porch I was able to see the shape of his head, and even though it was dark enough that I couldn't discern his eyes, it was clear that he was glaring back at me. I sprinted down to my parents' bedroom and grabbed the sole upstairs house phone, dialed my mom's cell phone, and informed her there was a person at the front door who wanted in. I didn't know my dad's number by heart yet, and my mom, probably slightly inebriated after dinner, became sober in an instant. Her tone changed, and she sounded high-pitched and scared. She questioned whether I'd spoken to the man or told him someone was home, and I was honest, yes. When she questioned whether anyone would have known I was home alone, the pizza delivery guy came to mind. I informed her the delivery man had questioned whether I was home alone, and the doorbell rang 2 additional times. The man refused to leave. My mother instructed me to remain in their room, lock the door, and that they were on their way to call the police. She had me on the line as they used my father's phone to make the call. They had to go outside the restaurant to do so. It was a summer evening and the windows were slightly open for ventilation. I heard the side house gate to the backyard open softly, quietly, through my parents' phone. I informed my mom, and she continued to whisper, "Stay quiet, stay in the room, keep the lights off." I also whispered, frightened, "What if he is trying to get in through the den window?" And instructed me to shut up and wait for the police, and fed me bulletins on their ETA. I was getting to calm down when I heard someone in the house footsteps drifting down the stairs. I told my mom hysterically. I heard her shout something into the other phone to the police, likely, "The man is in the house, hurry." She instructed me to get under the bed. For me at 12, it was the most terrifying, unreal experience I'd ever had. My only defense was the small lock on my parents' bedroom door. I could hear footsteps climbing the stairs. They went by my sister's and my room down the hall and then disappeared as the burglar went rummaging through the rooms. My mother informed me that the police would break in and not to get up until they did. I listened to the intruder's footsteps come into our bedroom, try the doorknob multiple times, as if it magically would open, then knock lightly. He didn't say a word. After another attempt at the knob, I could hear his footsteps come back out of the hallway and disappear into the rest of the house. I stopped myself from crying or making a noise. Later, my mom informed me that the police had come but told me not to move. Instead of a break-in, I heard big footsteps and a man yelling my name and introducing himself as an officer. They climbed the stairs and my mom gave me permission to open the door and reply. There were 2 officers upstairs when I unlocked it, and there were 2 downstairs. The back door had been left slightly ajar and the sliding window was open wide, obviously the point of first entry. I informed the police of all that happened, including my suspicion regarding the pizza delivery guy, and my parents came scurrying back. By the time they arrived, there were only 2 officers left. With the pizza guy's description in the report, the police said they'd investigate. The next night my parents took me to Johnny's and asked me to point the guy out. I didn't notice him. The manager stated the only worker who was any description like mine was Phil, who happened to be on a delivery, and then had to come out and tell us it couldn't be him and ordered us off the property. My parents created a scene and promised never to use them again. We waited in the car for nearly an hour, and when Phil did not return, we departed. Attorneys we spoke to refused to take the case due to insufficient evidence. We never returned to that pizzeria, and it was many years before my parents were comfortable leaving me alone in the house again. To this day, I believe it was the pizza delivery guy, or someone affiliated with him. Who else would have known I was home alone that evening? When I was a teenager, we relocated from California to a remote piece of North Idaho. My parents had retired and constructed a dream home way back in the backcountry with no houses around for miles and miles, just dense, rolling forest that sat behind national parkland and logging sites. The house was huge, 2 levels, a gym, a complete bar and pool room, and a real movie theater in the basement, isolated, peaceful, perfect. I had my high school girlfriend, and one evening when my parents were away, I invited her over to watch a film. We opened a beer and went to the movie room to view Gladiator. Things were all good until, at around midnight, this rush of fight or flight washed over me, an abiding fear my mind couldn't rationalize. My heart raced as I continued to look at the open windows staring out into black woods. I didn't want to scare my girlfriend, so I remained silent even as the situation between us escalated. However, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. After the film, I escorted her to her car and watched her pull away, then recalled having left the bar, pool room, and movie room lights on. I headed back downstairs, turned off the movie room lights, and stopped cold. Standing at the big window facing the backyard was a man. He appeared homeless, crazy hair, dirty clothes, but his face was what glued me to the ground, the widest, most grotesque smile I'd ever seen and wide, crazed eyes. He had a knife and was tapping it very lightly against the glass repeatedly. I figured I was dreaming. I slowly retreated to the barroom and turned off the lights in there. There's a sliding glass door into the woods in that room. I stood there aghast as he walked calmly from the window to the door, still smiling and staring, until he was within a foot or so of the glass. We were separated by glass alone. He didn't attempt to break in. He didn't move. He just stood there. I didn't say a word and went up the stairs, and just then my parents came home. I said to them, "I need to go to the psych ward or something. I swear I just saw a guy with a knife standing outside staring at me." My mom's face went white, my dad's eyes narrowed. He took his rifle out of the gun safe and ran outside to look around the property. My mother informed me that there had been a few burglaries in the district and that my description fit reported cases. The police searched but nothing was found, no entry, no prints, just frigid, dark woods. That should have been where it ended, but it wasn't. That evening I could hear a soft metallic tapping beneath my bed, like something tapping against glass, and it never let up for weeks. It would disappear at times, other times it showed back up at 3 a.m. I even swore that I heard people walking on the roof one evening. My parents had to go out of town for a couple of days one winter and left me alone with a shotgun and our large Rottweiler, who remained quiet unless something was really there. One evening I listened to slow, heavy crunching through the snow outside. The dog pricked up his ears, growled low, then barked furiously, a noise he made only ever when he saw something actual. I remained quiet because I did not want whoever was outside to realize that I was home. Then the knock, slow, hollow, goading. I didn't respond and slept with the shotgun beside me, door closed, blinds down, dog at my feet. The next morning I went outside and my stomach felt new human footprints ring the house and ended at each window as if someone had been peering in, looking for me. I tracked the prints 50 yards into the woods until they began to zigzag and circle back, as if whoever was making them was attempting to mislead me. I headed back. Something compelled me to halt. That evening the tapping came back more strongly. I knew he was back. I unlocked the front door, took up the shotgun, and walked out onto the second-floor deck. I flipped on the fog lights to illuminate the backyard, and there he was, the same fellow, same smile, same dead eyes, knife in hand, looking directly at me. I lifted the shotgun and yelled, "If you don't get out of here, I'm going to shoot one straight through you." He didn't stir or blink, only glared, unblinking and grinning, so I took a warning shot off into the air and finally got him to react. He staggered backward, then backed slowly into the woods, still facing me. That's when I resolved to let the dog loose. I raced down into the basement, flung open the sliding glass door, and turned him loose. He shot off through the woods like a black bullet, barking and snarling more furiously than I'd ever witnessed, although he wore a shot collar so he couldn't get very far. I hope he ran that fellow off for good, because the night of that episode one never saw him music anymore. Flash forward to spring break in March of 2022. I was a sophomore in college, and with 5 of my friends, we rented a cabin in South Carolina for a few days so we could escape it all. No school, no stress, no phones, the kind of vacation where you get too drunk, play your music too loud, and create stupid memories. There were 4 guys, me, Matt, Chris, and Tyler, and 2 girls, Jess and Sarah. We'd all been tight since freshman year. The cabin was stupid cheap for its size, 2 stories, a wraparound porch, 2 bathrooms, and listed as being on private land near a lake. It was way out there with no towns for miles and forest all around. The owner spoke with a thick accent and sounded sort of weird over the phone. His only advice was, just don't go too far into the woods. Some old things behind there. Wells, broken fences, snakes. You don't want to get lost. We made a joke out of it, thinking he was taking spooky southern flair, but the outing became unfunny once we arrived. The ride was eternally long. GPS failed a whole hour before we reached our destination, and the final leg was dirt road and gravel just wide enough for a single car. The trees grew thicker as we approached. When we finally did see the cabin, we all fell silent. It wasn't in the photos, older, grubbier, dusty windows, a couple of shutters loose on hinges, and a low odor out there like old trash and damp wood. We made jokes that it gave it character, offloaded, staked claims, and began drinking at 7 p.m. The first evening was a good time. We barbecued, blasted music from a Bluetooth speaker, and played cards, but by 11 o'clock it started getting cold and we went inside, and that's when I realized how black the woods were, not nighttime black but an absolute blackness. The porch lights only lit a few feet and the trees seemed to be closing in on us, with no bugs, no breeze, just oppressive quiet. We hit about 2 a.m., and I had a ground floor room by the kitchen with a window overlooking the woods. At about 4:15 I woke up for no apparent reason, my heart pounding, and then I heard a tap tap, tap. At first I thought it was the heater, but it came again, steady, non-metallic, non-mechanical, like fingers. I stared and there was a guy pressed against the glass, face nearly on it, white skin, crazy hair, no shirt on, mouth hanging open like he was inhaling through it, eyes wide and not blinking. He did not move, only tapped slow and gentle like he was playing a joke on me. My body froze. The knocking increased the pace, so I whispered to Matt on the couch. I called his name louder. He stirred drowsily, nodded, leapt up, overturned the coffee table, and frightened the guy away. When Matt flipped on the porch light and ran outside, the man was gone. The girls were scared. Tyler attempted to explain it as a drunk local, and Chris proposed that it was a lost hunter, but I knew that man was staring at me. He wasn't lost. We barricaded doors, shoved the couch in front of the large living room window, and stayed awake in shifts. Nothing else occurred that evening. The following morning we discovered bear prints making circles around the cabin, at each window, even the small one above the upstairs shower. That should have been it. We should have left, but we were stupid and obstinate and lingered. Night 2 began the same way: beverages, music, fire pit, but the atmosphere was different. Everyone kept looking over their shoulder into the woods. Jess didn't imbibe, and Chris wore a hunting knife on his belt. After we got inside and double-checked the locks, at about 3:30 a.m. Matt excused himself to get some water, halted in the hole, and called my name. When I approached, he was gesturing to a person in the kitchen. The same one, now standing inside and naked, his back with long raw-looking scratches, standing before the fridge with his eyes fixed upon it like he didn't know what it was, slowly swaying back and forth as if rocking on his feet. Matt stood back silently. We converged at the doorway to the hallway. I had a pocket knife, Sarah a fire poker, Chris a splintered chair leg, and when we turned on the light the man was nowhere to be seen. The back door was open, but not forced or broken, but only open. We left 20 minutes later, quietly and without argument, packing only the basics: wallets, keys, phones, and drove through the woods until we had signal to call the sheriff. At an off-the-highway diner we had the deputy who greeted us not look surprised. He inquired as to whether anyone had been hurt and said, "Yeah, we've had issues with people squatting in those woods, not always right in the head." We had attempted to tell him this wasn't just some homeless man. He watched, came back 2 nights running, and seemingly had a key or some way inside. The deputy nodded as if he'd heard it already, and when we brought up the owner his expression suggested he may have known the man. Undefined. Few days later the ad disappeared from all the rental websites and we never received explanations, calls, or even our deposit backed. Undefined. But that face, the manner in which he looked at me in the window, still comes to mind when I wake up at night. We don't discuss that trip much anymore, and to my knowledge, none of us have returned to South Carolina since.